Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. First, let me apologize. I'm really late with my Facebook Live today. And the reason why, as you can maybe see if you watched any of my lives this week, Belinda and I are still in Mexico. But I've been, by the pool, getting my reading done. And so I've been excited all week to talk about the book I'm going to focus. But not too surprisingly, we have a little bit of internet connectivity issues today, and we didn't have consistent internet. As a matter of fact, we don't have consistent TV either. And so I was a little delayed getting you today's book club. Now, today we're going to review Atomic Habits, which is by James Clear. It is a fantastic book. One, James actually, I read the book again. And by the way, when I read this book, when I picked the book up to read, I didn't realize I'd read it before. I had just probably breezed through it so quickly, it didn't make a lasting impression. But immediately when I was reading it, I go, I've read this book before. And then I remembered, oh, this book is great. And then I had a chance to listen to the audio twice, the audiobook twice. It's only 5.5 hours, and I listened to it this week out on my exercise. And so I'm fully prepared, pumped up to talk about the book. We just didn't have the internet. So I'm a little late, and now it's dinner time for many of you, as it might be for us soon. But I still want to go through the book, and I'm going to try something a little different this week, because it's interesting, when I'm out and about, and I'm all at meetings or conferences, and people come up and they talk to me, and they give me plenty of feedback, which I appreciate on my social media progress or the things I'm trying. They often say they really like the book club, which I'm surprised about, since I get no comments on it, and it's hard to tell who's checking in, who's checking it out. But I get really good comments, and so I'm going to try to get better at these book reviews. In preparation for these book reviews, I read the book, so there's no book that I cover that I don't read that week. So I'm not mailing it in, I'm reading it that week. And then as I prepare for it, I usually now do which I learned from How to Make $1 Million Offers. I both listen to the book and I read the book. And then I take a ton of notes. I learned how to do notes taking from Love is Killer app by Tim Sanders. And so I do a ton of annotations and notes and highlights throughout the book. And then when it happens, I collect all those. And I make a lengthy, you would be surprised, I make a lengthy book report summary. And sometimes, like this book, it might be 10, 12, 15 pages. And there's no way I can cover 10, 12, 15 pages of bullet point notes in such a short format like this. And you probably want to be interested in listening to me talk about this book for an hour when you can just listen to the whole thing in 5.5 hours. But I'm thinking about doing it. What I think I'll do tomorrow is I will post my actual summary, the full summary, on LinkedIn as an article, and you can check out the full book summary there. And then let me know whether you like that format, because if not, I won't do it. The thing I think, if I'm going to spend a few hours making a book summary, I should offer it to people, because maybe you can get something out of it. And then you can give me feedback whether you like the format, don't like the format. And so today what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to just hit some of the big concepts in this book versus typically I would go chapter by chapter by chapter, hit each key point in every chapter, list the collateral material, which there's a ton of collateral material in this book. I mean, there's a ton of templates and charts and how-to, which you can get at if you go to atomichabits.com/media. It's all for free there. Great stuff, right? And so I would typically go, okay, this is the 4 quadrant or this, and I would explain it to you. But there's no way we can do this in a short time. Instead, I think I'm going to give you my notes, and then you can get all of that in my notes, and you can either enjoy it or not enjoy it. And so that's what we're going to do. So let's just talk about some of the big topics. Here's the first thing, and this is true. It's so easy to listen to. James Clear does such a good job. Usually, like the author that reads their own book, they don't really read well, and it's not exciting, and I zone out, But James was really good at reading his book, and I enjoyed listening to him, which is surprising. And then the next thing is, a lot of the stuff we've heard about and a lot of stuff we've read, because he uses a ton of material from other thought leaders and from other authors and other speakers and other people in this space. He freely uses it and freely gives information on it, but he builds such a nice and comfortable voyage to get exposed to all of it again and to put it all together. And what the thing there is, what I'm bringing up is, it's easy to read, easy to listen to, but if you speed through it, like apparently I did the first time I read it, you're going to miss out on a lot of golden nuggets, because you're going to speed through it and you're not going to take time. And so I would recommend don't speed through the book. Don't listen to it in a couple settings. Read a chapter. There's 18 chapters. There's 4 parts. There's an extensive appendix. There's 2 bonus chapters. But read it slowly and digest it, and then figure out how you can apply the different things. So, and so what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna not randomly, but just kind of talk about the points that struck me. And then, like I said, I'll post my full book report in case you want to see it. Most likely on LinkedIn as an article. But if we were just kind of say, hey, this is what this book about. I mean, at its core, here's the bottom line: real change comes from the compound effects of hundreds of small decisions or habits over time accumulate to produce remarkable results. And that's the thing. Here's the thing: when you think atomic, if you didn't read the book, you might think big, like atomic bomb, like a big habits, right? Atomic's exactly opposite. It's microscopic. The smallest changes create the biggest difference over time. And so what James is, he does a really good job about painting a path and a process on how to make change, how to replace habits, how to create new habits, how to have the most success possible, what you need to be able to implement new habits. And so in that vein, the goal to achieve our goals, we need to first build systems made of single processes and habit that will take us to our goals. The goal is the vision, but the systems are the how we get there. And it's really important. And he spends a ton of time on process development, process creation, really good stuff. And he revisits it in several chapters in the book. And then I really love this. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. It's the good and bad things that we do each and every day that compound over time that create real change. So habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. I like that. And one of the things he says in the book is, the activities you take each day, those are the habits that you display each day. Those little activities are votes, and they're votes for who you are. And you can vote any way you want. All right, so it's really important to understand in here the difference between systems and goals. Small habit, and this is another thing. This is really interesting. When we talk about habits need to be part of our identity, and those then support our concept of who we are. And so over time, we just support who we are. And let's say, and I'll talk about this a little later, but let's say that you want to be a musician, right? Well, you don't play music to learn how to be a musician. You play music because you are a musician, because you see yourself that way. That's your identity. So you support your identity, right? Which is great. All right, so I'll share some quotes really quickly. The success is the product of daily habits, not a once-in-a-lifetime transformations. Another one, time magnifies the margin between success and failure. Love that, right? And he uses the example, which we've heard before, like, this stuff isn't new, but if a plane left Los Angeles and was 3 degrees, it was trying to go to New York, it was 3 degrees off course, a very tiny amount, that's less than 4 feet from the nose, the wrong direction, it would land in Washington, D.C., not New York, right? And so time magnifies the margin of success. Just like an example, distance magnifies the margin between success and failure. And so, good times, good habits make time your ally, but bad habits make time your enemy. And there's a chart in there. If you do 1% every better every day, you exponentially improve. If over time, not immediately, over time, but if you make 1% bad habits, if you get 1% worse with bad habits every day, then you actually crash and burn really quickly. The time for failure is much more compressed than the time for success. Really interesting. Really interesting. All right, so we mentioned habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. That's just mentioned all through the book. There are 4. So he uses. There's 2 big things here. There's how a habit is formed, right? How a habit is made, and he creates this, this argument on how habits are made. It's cue, craving, response, and reward. And those all then are from 4 laws of behavior change. So you get the cue and the craving, the response, and reward. That's how you feed a habit. But to do that, you have to do these next 4 things, which are the laws of behavior change. The one is you need to make it obvious, right? So everyone, you need to make it obvious. The habit needs to be effortless for us and require no active thinking, right? So, for example, if you want to start taking vitamins, you put the vitamin right at the front of your sink every morning so that you see it and can't ignore it. You're making it easy to take. Or if you want to read a book every night, when you make your bed in the morning, you put a book on your pillow so that when you go to bed, it's ready for you. You're making it obvious. You're making it. There's no active thinking. You've already set it up to succeed. You got to make it attractive. If it's unattractive, you won't likely have enough willpower to do it over and over. And by the way, he talks about willpower a whole bunch, willpower and environment. And he's like, look, the people that have the most willpower, the people who are best at willpower, are the people that don't have to use it. Instead, they create processes and systems and structure that keeps them disciplined in a way they don't have to use willpower, right? And so you need to come up to make a habit attractive. And here he uses a great example. He used a famous study. Some guy thought he needed to exercise more. He needed to ride his Peloton or his bike more, and he never did it. But one of the things that got in the way is he loved to binge TV shows on Netflix, and so he found himself spending a ton of time on the couch watching TV, and then that lethargy made it harder for him to get on the bike. And so he was an engineer. He created a program on his computer that when he rode the bike, it earned him credit to watch the TV programs he wanted. And if he stopped riding, then the TV would pause, right? And so he put something very positive, watching things he loved doing, binging on Netflix, attached to a habit that wasn't as attractive, and then he was able to do it. That's also called habit stacking. There's a whole bunch of technical terms in the book that are super cool. Habit stacking, really good. And of course, the third one here on these laws of behavior change is make it easy. The less friction between you and the habit, the greater chance that you can actually do it. Super simple, right? So if you want to go to the gym, making it easy is packing your gym bag in the morning, so you don't have to, so that doesn't become an obstacle or friction. And then lastly, the four laws of behavior change is make it immediately satisfying. Our brains need dopamine. They need that satisfaction. So you have to come up with something that in your habit, the activity in your habit, rewards you. And so you got to find that reward so that you keep doing it. Now, if this is a really interesting concept, and we could talk about it for some time, we're not going to, and that is the plateau of latent potential, right? And so if you find yourself struggling to build a new habit or to break a bad one, it's not because you've lost your ability to improve. It's often because you haven't crossed the plateau of latent potential. And here's the best example of it. He uses in the book. Let's say that your goal is to defrost an ice cube, and you take the ice cube out of a 0-degree freezer and you put it on a kitchen counter in an environment where the temperature is 25 degrees. Well, that ice cube's not melting, right? But then if you raise the temperature to 26 degrees, the ice cube's not melting. But the work is starting, right? And if you go to 28 degrees, 29 degrees, 30 degrees, 31 degrees, as you're raising the heat to the house, you're doing the work to hit your goal or your potential. You've created a system or a process. And that's the plateau of latent potential, is you just haven't got to the tipping point yet of 32 degrees, 33 degrees, and that's when the ice starts to melt. And so you give up before you see that transformation because it's latent potential. And that could be, and he uses all sorts of examples. He uses the Stonecutter's Creed. He used it, we're most familiar with the Pound of Stone, but he uses the Stonecutter's Creed. He used a couple other examples that, you have to, delayed gratification is sometimes because of the plateau of latent potential. You just have to be aware of that, right? And you can't say often enough, just adopt systems first approach instead of focus on goals. Goals, which we talked about, goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. If you want better results, then forget about setting goals. Focus on systems instead. And this is the key point. Goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are best for making progress. A handful of problems, this is another thing we talk about quite a bit. All sorts of problems happen if we start to create habits, or goals or habits that aren't in alignment with our identity, if they're not in alignment with what we are like as a human, right? Then that causes all sorts of conflicts, and those conflicts cause all sorts of failures in creating the habits that will lead you to your goals. And then this is a great quote. This is one of probably my favorite quotes in the book. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You rise to the level of your systems. Oh, lied to you. That's not the quote. The quote is, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. That is great, isn't it? That's so good, I think. And we talked about how a habit has to be part of your identity. Really important. And in the book, he used, look, the goal isn't to read a book. The goal is to become a reader, right? So the goal, it's the process that then supports the goal, which actually substantiates the identity. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. Because when you start to see yourself as a runner, right, you'll be able to work towards running a marathon. But if you just go, I got to go run a marathon, but you don't see yourself as a runner, you will never run that marathon. Because it's just going to have to take too much discipline and self-control. It said you have to have the identity that you want to be that person, right? And then that will help bridge you to whatever you're at. And it works even more when you have negative inputs, right? Because the subconscious mind is incredibly powerful. And he talks about this in a full chapter about how you have to work with your subconscious mind because it's so powerful. And part of it is what we say to ourselves and what we believe. And that's why the identity of who you think you are really becomes fuel for creating the habits to support that identity and over the long term your goals, right? So, and on this thought, your identity emerges out of your habits. You are not born with preset beliefs. Every belief, including those about yourself, is learned and coordinated through experience. More precisely, your habits are how you embody your identity. It's so important to think about this, and that's what you need. You need to have alignment, congruency. And I love this because one of the tests he uses, especially to create, get rid of negative thoughts. If you're trying to lose weight, if you constantly ask yourself, is eating this cookie going to support the person I am? Is it going to support the healthy person I see myself? Or does eating this cookie, will it, contradict or conflict with my identity or who I think I'm more? And then the next thing is evidence. The more you do something, the more that you do something, you start to get evidence that you're that person, right? So if you go to church every Sunday for 20 years, you have 20 years of evidence that you're religious, that you're church going, because you have the evidence, you believe it. And so sometimes this creating new habits is creating the evidence repeatedly over time, and it will get easier. It's less discipline because you start to become that person, and you have plenty of evidence you're that person, so you don't have to fight a lot of self-doubt or conversation in your mind. And like I said, I'm going over this really lightly. The book is great. You have to go kind of slow through this, right? Because you don't want to miss. There's so many great things, and he uses so much of other people's work, which I think is a positive. Now, I mentioned this at the beginning, and this is one of my favorite concepts of the book, is every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Isn't that great? Just hundreds and thousands of new votes every day. All right, let's see if we can. I can keep going forever, you guys, but I know it's Sunday night. Probably had enough. So, we talk about that vote. Does this behavior help me become the type of person I wish to be? Does the habit cast a vote for or against my desired identity? Because habits that reinforce your desired identity are usually good. Habits that conflict with your desired identity are usually bad, right? And then we talked about, hey, disciplined people are just far better at structuring their lives in a way that does not require heroic willpower and self-control. In other words, they spend less time in tempting situations. And he talks a ton about environment. Early in the book, he talks about environment, and you have to create environments that support your habits, right? And so, for example, if you have problems sleeping, then what you probably need to do is you need to take away all stimulus that's in your bedroom. Your bedroom needs to be a place for sleep, so it shouldn't be a place for your cell phone. It shouldn't be a place for TV, right? And when you get your environment right and you get in alignment with what your habits are and what your identity is, then it's easy to get compound effects. Simple as that, right? And so he said, and I said this before, is the people with the best self-control are typically the ones who needed to use it the least. It's easier to practice self-restraint, but you don't have to use it very often. Like, how true is that, right? There's a whole section about our subconscious and how we want to avoid criticism and how trying to avoid criticism harms us in habit formation. Because, the greater the obstacle, the more difficult the habit, the more friction there is between you and your desired state. That's why it's crucial to make habits so easy that you'll do them and you don't feel like it. If you can make good habits more convenient, you'll be more likely to follow them through. Now, here's the thing. This is another good concept. This is directly into it. Put another way on this, the costs of your good habits are in the present, the cost of your bad habits are in the future, right? So let's say I want to stop smoking. Well, that could stress me out. Let's say the doctor says if I keep smoking, I'm going to die. Well, now I'm totally anxious. I'm stressed out. So what do I want to do? I want to smoke, right? And then the immediate, gratification of smoking that one cigarette happens today, but the cost of it happens in years from now when I get cancer, right? I get the benefit today, but I pay the price later. When creating good habits, it's the exact opposite. You pay the price today for the benefits tomorrow. So a lot of habits parts is delayed gratification, but you can still build triggers that build reward systems, dopamine, so that you can learn how to enjoy delayed gratification. Part of that is by focusing on the system, not the goal, right? Makes sense? That's why the system is so much more manageable, and that's how you get to more delayed gratification. And so he goes in the book quite a bit. You got to create immediate pleasure, so that you get that dopamine right away, even though the reward's going to be delayed. It's really good. Now, there are a couple other topics that we're going to touch on, and I'll wrap this up. If we talked about before, now here's one of the things. When you build rewards, they have to be in alignment with what your identity is. Like, let's say that you think you're a healthy person. Remember, you get that identity. And so you're going to stop all sorts of bad habits. You're going to stop having a Snickers bar right before you jump in bed at night, right? But then you create reward systems that, hey, if I lose 10 pounds, I'll have a Snickers bar. Well, that conflicts with your identity is, and now you're just watching that. You get a little gain, you get a little giveaway. You don't want to do that. Make sure that whatever your reward is in alignment with the identity you want to be. And there's all sorts of examples he uses. And as we said, the more a habit becomes part of your life, the less outside encouragement you need, because the actual success in building that habit. And let me give you an example. When you go to the gym the first day, it just hurts. All your muscles hurt, that lactic acid. Go to the gym the second day, it still doesn't feel good. The third day, it doesn't feel good. And after a week, you got through a lot of the pain, but you don't see the gain. You're not all puffed up and muscular or in shape, right? But over time, you start to see the gain, and so you don't have to worry about creating those immediate rewards any longer, because the habit is leading to the desired result and the identity you want. So it totally makes sense, right? Now, I'm probably going to wrap this up with this last, probably one or two last concepts. The first one is compound interest, right? And and the idea is don't break the chain. Like if you're going to go to the gym every day, you set your goal to go to the gym 3 times a week, whatever it is. Don't skip a week. Don't skip a day if your goal is 3 days. And because there's going to be days when you don't want to go. No matter what it is, whether it's gym or whatever your habit is, there's going to be days you're not going to want to show up for that habit that's supporting your identity. But what happens is showing up, regardless of the quality of, say in this case, the workout, regardless of the quality of the workout, it substantiates who you are as a person. I am an athlete. By the way, they're having a wedding outside in the courtyard, which you hear the screaming. But I'm an athlete. I go to the gym as scheduled. It doesn't matter whether you had a crappy workout. It doesn't matter if you go and just do 2 push-ups. What mattered is you showed up and you didn't break the chain, because in the compound effect, breaking the chain one time costs more than costs far more than the gain of going every day. But you got to keep the compounding. So the first rule of compounding is never interrupt it unnecessarily. Don't put a 0 on the board. Makes sense. All right. We've heard this quote before. Professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way. Professionals know what is important to them and work towards it with purpose. Amateurs get pulled off the course by urgencies of life. All right. So I tried to do a reasonable review in a short amount of time, although I'm way over time, and I try to shorten it down. I will most likely put my full book report on LinkedIn tomorrow as an article. Let me know if you like that. Let me know if it's useful. If I get no response, I probably won't keep posting it. But I enjoy reading the book, so thanks for listening.